Hello, and welcome to Creating the Curve, the podcast for STEM founders. Oh, goodness, have we got an episode for you today? One of my favourite people in the world, John Espirian. Now, I've known John for a very long time. It's years now, isn't it? Years
It
we've
is
known each other.
indeed.
I've had him on my previous podcast, and basically, I'm just inviting to everything, John, aren't I? And also, when I work at the Innovation Centre, I had John along to do a full day workshop, which everyone described as the best workshop they've ever attended in their entire lives. And
Wow.
even a year later, they are still talking about it. Remember John Esperian's workshop? So yeah, it's been fabulous. And then I've just come back, was it 2 weeks ago, from the Uplift Live conference. So John's been running the first LinkedIn conference in the UK and the biggest LinkedIn conference in the UK, the only, I think, only one. And for those of you watching on video, I just wanted to showcase my little Uplift Live bag. Um, and it's a brilliant session where I took away 40 pages of notes of things that I should be doing on LinkedIn.
Blimey.
So yeah, it was quite a lot. It was quite a lot. I've never been to conferences where I took away so many notes. So I just wanted to introduce John Espirian. Do you want to say hello and introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, thanks for having me, Anna. It's lovely to be back chatting with you. Yeah, so I call myself the relentlessly helpful LinkedIn nerd, which is quite a highfalutin title, really. But it's I used to be a software tester and I used to be a copywriter, so I've got a kind of techie background. But I've made a name now for just helping people understand how LinkedIn works because it's quite a big, complicated beast. And so I run training and I now do things like conferences all about LinkedIn best practice. So yeah, I'm your LinkedIn guy.
You are, and you were the person that really got me into LinkedIn because I was a half user at the time, and then I joined your Espresso Plus group. I think that was the days when it was the free group, and just picking up tips and advice. I started using it a lot more because
Mm.
it's weird. I don't know what there is this thing about LinkedIn, but people seem to be really scared of it. You know, when you came to
Yeah.
do the session at the centre, people are, oh, LinkedIn, oh, I don't know much about it, oh, it's quite scary. Do you know why do you think
Mm.
people have this sort of impression of it?
Well, I suppose it's because people don't see it as the same relaxed social media that you might get on something like Instagram or Facebook. It is more of a professional setting, and therefore people feel as though maybe they need to be on their best behavior and they don't quite know what to say because maybe a work peer or a boss or something like that is looking at them, and therefore they tend to stay away. And also, there's a massive misperception about what the platform is. I mean, if you ask the average person in the street, they would probably equate it to something like Glassdoor or these other kind of job hunting sites. That's something that you
Mhm.
would look at to upload your CV maybe and just use when you're transitioning or you've just been made redundant and now it's time to look for a job. But actually, that's completely misunderstanding the potential value that it offers. And it's the place where I actually transact basically all of my business now, and I've built a personal brand there. So maybe we'll dig into that a bit, but it's certainly much more than just a place to deposit your CV and use only when you're changing jobs.
And do you think, because that's the one thing that I have from when I'm sort of teaching like my marketing course and we delve into LinkedIn, because people perceive it as this sort of very business place, I find they struggle to be quite authentic on it. You know, you keep seeing these comments,
Yeah.
this is not Facebook, on people that share personal things. But
Mm.
I do wonder whether that is a difficulty as well. Because on Facebook, I talk about my family and everything, but I'm quite open on LinkedIn. I'll chat about my life as well. But I think maybe does that probably makes it feel quite stiff and you have to put on this like business voice or something that's not very authentic potentially.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be like that at all. I mean,
Mm,
until such time as AI takes over absolutely everything, LinkedIn is meant to be a platform used by human beings. And
mm,
we don't just turn off the emotional or the personal sides of ourselves when we show up to work. There's probably less of it, but it doesn't go away completely. And therefore, there's always space for showing a bit of humanity in what you do and the way you show up, whatever your sense of humor is, and your personality and your personal interests. And it's valuable to do that because if you think about it, the platform is full of logo designers and accountants and architects and
Mm.
all sorts. And if you don't give people a reason to be interested in you, to remember you, you end up maybe competing on price, if you're a service provider, and that's no place to be. So you actually need to show up and give people a bit more than that if you want to stand out and be remembered. And so, yeah, talking about something that's beyond the realm of just work is actually strategically a very, very valuable thing to do. And once you get into the habit of doing it, it becomes a lot more natural. And the people who've done it and have succeeded are probably wondering, why didn't I do this sooner? And I kind of wonder that myself. I wish I'd known to just turn up online and build a personal brand years before I actually did, because I'd probably
Yeah.
be financially a lot better off if I had.
So, so do you know it's really interesting because the one thing that I was speaking to Niraj, who obviously did a talk at your conference, and he was talking about sales, but he said to me afterwards that the one thing that people commented on was not the sales content of his thing, it was the personal stories that he told.
Mm.
Everyone said, "Oh, I really loved your stories. I related to them. I understood them." And I feel like that's really backing up your point. That's the bit people remember, isn't it? That's that
Yeah.
differentiator. There's something special about you. There's a lady, and I don't know if you know, she's got in on her so LinkedIn headline. She's something like, "I'm one in." 60 billion or whatever it is, how many people's on the planet, because every single person in this world is individual and different, and I love that. I think that's that sort of uniqueness, isn't it?
Yeah, it matters. If you're going to be noticed and remembered and preferred, you have to show a little bit more than what your professional skills are, because
Mm,
realistically, unless you're the absolute best in the world at that thing, and that's a very hard niche to occupy, then you'll be more powerful if you're just a bit different, and showing your
mm,
personality means that you've got more of a chance to show up as being different. I think for me, I don't tell many personal stories myself, to be honest with you, but I do always show up with a very distinctive look and feel to my content, so that I
mm,
reinforce that visually, but I also reinforce personality through words and phrases that I've kind of made up and I repeat to my audience. As again, it's just all about just being a little bit different and being a bit memorable. So this, I'm not trying to tell you that you need to go and kind of spill your guts on social media, on
mm,
LinkedIn or anything like that, because some people just aren't confident about doing this. But it is much more about just ensuring that wherever you can, you show up in a way that is in some way different and memorable.
It's funny because the things that I always remember about, on your LinkedIn, you've got obviously the relentlessly helpful LinkedIn nerd is quite memorable, but you always talk about don't be a douche canoe,
Yeah.
which is one of my favorites. And then the pineapple. So if someone's messaging you to put the pineapple in. So
Yeah.
there's those things that I remember. And obviously your love of football as well. There's all these
Hmm.
little bits that included. It's interesting because I don't put huge amounts about my personal life on there, but people all know that I love biscuits. There's little snippets I put in, and my biscuit posts always do the best, weirdly. I
Yeah.
think other people equally like food-based posts. And then I remember, and it was funny, I just was reminded of this about a couple of days ago, because when I did around the time I did my last podcast, I don't know if you remember this, but because I worked by myself, I decided I wanted a co-founder. And before I found Anne Marie, I had Bob Ball, which was a green football, and it was my son's green football, and I put eyes on it, and I don't know why, but people absolutely love those posts. And it wasn't personal, it was my son's green football, but it was that sort of humanness behind them. I feel like I
Yeah.
should bring Bob back. I don't know where. I think he's deflated somewhere now, bless him. So I might
There we
have to give him
go.
a pump up and pump him back up again and bring him
Yeah,
along.
maybe a Bob vlog would be a good idea. But
Yeah.
it's just stuff that helps you stick in people's heads. That's what it's about.
Mm,
There are more than 1 billion people on this platform, and actually, I've done some analysis that shows that maybe only about 350 million of those are actually active
mm,
on a monthly basis. But very few people actually show up on a regular. basis in terms of posting, but nevertheless, we're still talking about millions of people that you're effectively competing
Mm,
against for attention in the feed. And so anything that you can do to stand out that is genuine, you don't want to make up stories and create stuff that is
mm,
just effectively what we would call clickbait. It has to be genuine to you. But if you can do that beyond the professional realm, then that'll help people remember you. And another thing to keep in mind is that when you do those things that are maybe more, let's say, personality based, and those posts invariably perform well. Everyone says the same sort of thing. That has an overall halo effect on the other stuff that is actually a bit more kind of maybe dry and boring, but actually attends your business needs. So, for example, if you were trying to promote an event or a course or a book or just basically something you want to buy, you want people to buy, that on its own probably isn't going to be very successful. But if it's surrounded by other posts that you put out that have
mm.
performed pretty well, then the chances of that thing that would otherwise be considered a bit boring being seen by more people will increase. So keep in mind that there's a halo effect of having these popular posts out in the world for you.
And the one thing that I find with like a lot of the small business owners that I speak to is that it's that initial fear of getting started on the platform. They may have tried one or two
Mm,
posts. They've got not many followers. They've tried one or two posts. They've got like one like or no likes, no comments, and it's a bit crickets out there. And I think
mm.
that puts people off. But there are different ways to sort of engage on the platform, aren't there? Where would you start if you were someone that wanted to really get started on the platform, but didn't want to put a post out there and feel a bit disappointed that no one was engaging with it?
Yeah. Well, the very first thing I would do is invest the time in getting your profile up to scratch. That's your home base on LinkedIn. And I talk to so many people who either are new to the platform or who haven't been active in ages, and they'll say, "Oh, don't look at my profile; it's not up to date." Well, you want a profile that you can actually be proud to show to other people, and it's just so much more than a CV. It's your personal brand. It's your shop front. So go and get a nice photo done and a nice banner image done at the top, and think about your professional headline, the bit of text that follows you all around LinkedIn, the thing that really summarizes what you're all about and in which domain you operate and for whom. Get those things sorted first, because really there's no point doing anything else at all on LinkedIn if you're not proud of your shop front. So get that sorted first, and that can take a little bit of time. Let's assume you've done that. You don't then need to go on some mission to go and post loads and loads of things of yourself of your own, because that is legitimately quite scary. You're not sure what to write about, you don't know whether you're going to have an audience and so forth. So it's much more profitable for you, and lower stakes actually, to go and look for existing conversations that are out there, where you actually know something about the topic and you can contribute thoughtfully and show that you know what you're talking about and that you're mixing in the right circles. And there's a kind of authority by association then. So maybe if I were brand new and I don't have any connections yet, I might just go into the search bar and search for my topic. Maybe I'm a digital marketer or a landscape gardener, because all sorts of professions are represented. You can go and take a search and then filter your results by just the posts that are out there and just see who's talking about what. And you can go, well, I've worked on a project like that, or I used to work in that company. I know something about that, and so forth. And just look for spots where you can turn up with some authority and some experience, and say something in the comments. And what will happen is that the people who are looking at content like that, who are in that field or who are interested in that field, might just see your comment and they'll go, "Wow, that's actually really insightful. I didn't know that thing, or that he's making this point in an interesting way." And before you know it, you might get a connection request from someone saying, "Saw you on Bob's post, and actually this is really interesting. Let's connect and have a chat." And the more of those doors you open to those conversations with people behind the scenes, ultimately the more business that you will get and referrals you'll get as well. So commenting is relatively easy to do in terms of, you don't need to think of an idea for a post, because you're effectively piggybacking on someone else's content.
Mm,
And you can do lots of those, and it's a great space for you to attract different eyeballs than the people who are already in your first level network, if you've even built that yet. And I know a couple of people who don't even really post their own stuff. They just look for spots where they can showcase their authority over years and comment on other people's stuff, and it still leads to inbound conversations. So um, comments, I think, are just disproportionately powerful. People really underestimate how good they can be, and most people don't really do it on an active basis. So if you can be the person who always shows up with something helpful, supportive, thoughtful on your topic of interest, people are going to soon associate you with someone as being someone who actually knows what they're on about.
Interestingly, because I comment more than I post, and I've had more DMs from people who have read my comments than have read my posts.
Yep.
Interestingly, just saying, "Oh, I saw your comment on so and so," and it's really interesting because I think, oh yeah, I'd really like to just say this bit that I've got some knowledge on, and then you sort of leave it, and then you get a nice little DM, which is lovely. So, from person's perspective, yeah, they really work for me, and I find them. I've always struggled with content, particularly video style, and I didn't start my first podcast until I was in Espresso Plus for a little while, and
Mm,
you gave me a lot of confidence to go out there and do it because my first video that I did was, do you remember Two Truths, One Lie? That you'd set as a challenge in because I was
yeah.
struggling with video. That was my first video.
Mm,
And so I still kind of stick to the commenting more. I will put posts out, but
mm,
it's still harder for me to do. So I just circle around the comments, see and interesting things I might be able to contribute to, and I love putting a good big juicy comment on something that I might have had some stats or some information that's really useful.
yeah.
Although my worst thing is you spend ages putting a comment on something, and then the person doesn't even acknowledge it, or and you ask them, or you might ask them a question back, and that's kind of my biggest bugbear sometimes, where people don't respond to comments. Do you find that happens quite a lot?
It does happen. Not too much to me, but I know that it happens to a lot of people out there. When it does happen to me, it tends to be me asking a question in the comments to someone who maybe works for a very large organization, often LinkedIn themselves.
Mm.
And it is frustrating because that's effectively someone just shutting down the conversation. And of course, we will naturally tend to remember that kind of thing and think, well, why should I bother commenting on their stuff anymore? So if you flip that around, if you imagine that you're the content creator, you absolutely should do everything you can to celebrate the people who are taking time out of their day to comment on your stuff, and making sure that comments don't get left unanswered. I mean, even someone who was saying something that's not maybe the kindest thing, although there tends not to be too much of that on LinkedIn, but even if it's someone did turn up and wasn't particularly pleasant, actually that by very virtue of the fact that they've commented on your content, they're probably getting you more visibility, and you replying to them might get you even more visibility. So you can go, thank you, Mr. Troll. You've helped the visibility of my content. So make sure that you do comment in spaces where you think you're likely to get a response, because otherwise it is a bit of a fool's errand if you're just commenting in spots where you know that people don't respond. Your content won't get as much visibility as it could. Just aim to do as much of it as you can stand on a regular basis. So I was looking at my stats recently, and I comment, according to my analytics, I comment 12 times as often as I post. Now, if you're just getting
Mm.
started, you might not be posting at all, and that's fine. But try and set yourself some kind of almost like a commenting budget to say, okay, I'm going to get involved in LinkedIn. I'm going to spend, I don't know, half an hour a couple of times a week just trying to get involved in this thing. Spend that time searching for content that's relevant and commenting, see how many you can get done, and see what it leads to in terms of your network growth and the conversations that you have behind the scenes. And that's a really, really good place to start.
Yeah, was it your last Uplift Live? Was it you or one of the other speakers that said, like, try and do at least 5 comments for what every one post or something along those lines? I think
Yeah,
there was
when I
sort of.
started training, so when I started training, I would often tell people to try and comment about 5 times before they considered posting. But actually, I've upped that now. So my standard training talks about doing it 10 times as often.
Mm.
Um, so, so, um, but it's still, again, it's lower stakes. It's quicker to comment. And I think LinkedIn does pay attention to these things. So, for example, if you're turning up on someone's post and you're leaving, let's say, a paragraph worth of text, that is far, far more involved from your point of view than just clicking a like button or
Mm,
just writing, great post or something like that. It shows that you've poured some time and some mental energy into that post. And because LinkedIn can't really determine the intrinsic value of the post, but it can look at these signals that say, well, 23 people have spent, however, half an hour's worth of writing time contributing to this thing.
mm,
It must be of interest. Let's show it to more people. So you're actually helping the creator of that content to get more visibility. And humans
mm,
being what they are, you know, many of them will want to reciprocate and come back and support your own content if it's relevant to them. So it's although it's just a good networking thing to do, it's strategically really valuable to do it as well. And most people don't.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking, sort of like, once they've sort of got this commenting underway, and they might want to dip their toe into sort of doing some content. Is there any
Mm.
sort of areas you suggest like they try first, or what does quite well, or is it just about what suits your personality
Yeah.
better? I know some people are writers, some people prefer video.
Yeah.
Where do people get going to sort of to start sort of that, maybe getting over that sort of mountain of not being a bit scared to post?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of thinking of what my colleague Gus Bandel talked about at the Uplift Live conference at the end of March, where he kind of talked about content in terms of music track lists. So
Yeah,
not all your songs are going to be the same. There's lots of different types of music that you might like if you were to put together a kind of mixtape, if you will. So you need to experiment to see what works for you. I mean, the easiest type of post would literally be get your fingers on the keyboard and just type out some text and hit post. That's going to be the quickest thing to do. And for
mm,
me, as someone who used to be employed as a writer, my text based posts perform in terms of visibility about 60% better than my image posts do. So that
yeah,
tells me that for my audience, they seem to prefer text versus image posts. But that doesn't mean, just because that's true for me, it doesn't mean it's true for you. So I would recommend that everyone experiments with the available post types that are out there. So text is the simplest because it's literally just one format. The most common format, I would say, is probably text plus an image. And that's because so many people come to LinkedIn from having experienced other social media before, where, especially, for example, on Instagram, it is a visual first platform, and therefore you can't very well post something without posting an image with it. That might work well for you. It doesn't particularly work well for me. But there are other types of posts you can try as well. You could try a video post if you're feeling confident and getting in front of the camera. You could do that. There are document posts, which are my best performing type of post, although they take the most time to put together, which is where
mm,
you put together a PDF and you can upload that. So, for example, for your business, you might have a brochure or a set of tips, something that you might use in a sales conversation, or some kind of maybe a case study of a client you've worked with. And these things tend to get formatted and look nice in PDF form. You can upload those and put a little caption to go with them. And that content tends to perform very, very well on LinkedIn. It does take a little bit more time to create it,
mm,
but if you've got ready made stuff like that, why not put that out there? And there are other types of posts as well. I mean, another one that's very popular with some audiences is polls. So you might just want to
mm,
do a bit of market research and ask your audience a question. So lots of different things. I can't tell you now what's going to work for you or for your audience, but I would suggest that you try a bit of everything. And if you can be disciplined enough, leave it a couple of weeks once you've tried a bit of everything and go back to your profile and look at your post analytics. And that will tell you how each post has performed in terms of the number of reactions and the number of comments and the number of impressions. So that's the number of times a piece of content was loaded. And you can just go, well, this type of content seems to be performing much better than this type of content. And therefore, I'm going to do more of what works and maybe a bit
mm.
less of what doesn't. So do a bit of playing with that, and hopefully you'll find your niche of what works best for you, and then just do more of what works.
Do you know, it's funny because I have different views. So my posts, my ones that are most successful are image with text. So they always
Yeah.
do really well for me, particularly images that have got my face on, much to my disgust, because I don't like having my face on photos. But so pictures of me do really well, pictures of biscuits, or a funny image. So those are my three that do really well.
Yeah.
And then I don't do very well on text posts at all. Video
Hmm.
posts really bomb for me.
Okay.
In fact, I looked back at the launch of my first podcast, and I did a 2 week launch, and all of the posts did really well, apart from my video ones. So I was getting quite decent views and comments and everything on everything. And then my video ones, I think I only got sort of like one like on them. And it was in the same
Mm.
sort of 2 weeks. It was really interesting going back and having a look. So I've had to reduce the videos for the launch of this podcast that I did, because I'm doing
Yeah.
a 2 week launch, which will have passed by the time this airs. So for me, they're hard. Carousels are not too bad for me as well. But yeah, it's really
Hmm.
interesting because I did the same. I had to experiment and kept
Yeah.
finding it was interesting. The more I put my face and my brand rainbow color at the bottom, like just a little snippet, someone would say, I knew this was your post because of the rainbow, or because of my face. Um,
Yeah.
so for me, it must be that sort of facial recognition. It's really interesting for me. It must be a visual recognition that people
Well,
need to know it's me.
yeah. Yes, I think faces will be the
Mm,
most likely thing to stop the scroll in the feed. So if you think about the fact that LinkedIn, like almost all other social media, is consumed mostly on mobile devices these days. LinkedIn
mm,
said even a couple of years ago that more than 70% of all traffic happens on the mobile device. So you have to imagine the typical user sitting there, thumb scrolling LinkedIn, and we're going to scroll through effectively hundreds of meters of content. If you imagine how far your thumb would scroll in a day, hundreds of meters of content. What are the things that are most likely to stop someone mid scroll and get their attention?
mm,
Well, an arresting image, something that has, an interesting color scheme, a face. These things tend to work very, very well. And so, for maybe potentially for people who are creating videos, it's really important that the thumbnail of your video is applied, and the first couple of seconds of the video, if it gets played, really should capture people's attention, because otherwise they'll move on. I think as someone who, again, with a writing background, maybe my text posts get more attention for me because I know how to write a hook that might just
mm.
catch someone's eye and go, what's that? Or I need to know this. There's something important in here. And there's no real hard science I can give you on that. It becomes a bit of an art form to try and get people's attention without overselling a promise you can't deliver. Because unfortunately, this is one of the problems of LinkedIn, is especially with some of the younger creators who would have you believe that they're already multimillionaires from posting twice on LinkedIn. That they'll try to oversell a promise that the rest of the post and the rest of their content simply doesn't deliver. And so there's a
Yeah,
difficult position that we occupy here, is how can you be engaging and eye-catching enough without actually selling a falsehood? And that's a difficult line to walk, but there's inevitably a way if you think about it carefully. And sometimes, your LinkedIn coach or your writing coach or whoever you might work with on communications might have why don't you try it like this? Or, and I think I did make this point at the conference, you might want to feed your ideas and your content into an AI tool and say, look, I've already written this. My aim is to capture attention without lying to people. How would I make this couple of paragraphs of text more attention worthy? And it might give you
yeah,
some ideas, and you go, oh, I'd never thought of writing it like that. It's still saying the same thing. So I haven't
mm,
cheated. It's still my idea, it's still my creative endeavor, but someone else's or something else has come up with a way of pitching it so that people are more likely to stop and pay attention. And attention is actually what it's all about. If you can get people to read your stuff, they're more likely to remember you, more likely to refer you, and ultimately more likely to do business with you. And that's kind of what it's all about.
yeah. It's interesting because I was teaching one of my sessions for my marketing course that I'm teaching at the moment, and we were talking about using sort of transcriptions, like podcast transcriptions, and popping them into chat gpt to get ideas for sort of blogs and social posts.
Yeah.
So I said to them, oh, John Espirian recommends that you do, when you do a LinkedIn post, you have a hook, you have the content, and a call to action. So we put
Mm.
the transcript in and said, make us 10 blog social posts from this content that you've created, and create the hook, the content, and the call to action. And it was a really good example, so they could see like what a hook might look like. They didn't
Hmm.
all use that hook that they used, but it kind of gave
Sure.
them that sort of, oh, that's what a hook is, that's what it,
Mm.
that's how it could do. And one of the ladies went off and has just done a hilarious post today using her
Nice.
own hook, which is brilliant. But she kind of just got the idea of what how they might work. And I love chat gpt for that, because it's, if you don't
Mm.
really understand a concept, if you're not a writer, they're a really good way to sort of understand. I'm going to say as well, chat gpt is really good at biscuit jokes. So if I want a biscuit related hook, sometimes I ask it, and it's very incredibly good at it.
Well, there you
So
go.
it's
It's as well as being a possible creative outlet. It is a bit of a potential replacement for the old editorial trick, which is simply write your content and go out and do something else and sleep or whatever, and come back to it
yeah.
and let it rest. And then when you come back to it, you might go, "That's a terrible hook. What was I thinking? No one's going to click on that." That's really what you want to get to, so that everything that you put out there is basically click worthy. But it can take a bit of time and a bit of practice. But yeah, if you can use an AI tool to support you, what you shouldn't do, and I'm sure all of your listeners know this, but it probably bears repeating, and I've seen too many examples of this, is you just outsource the entirety of your brain to the chat tool. In which case you'll just go, come up with 10 posts for me for next month. I work in finance, and it produces something really anodyne and lacking personality. And you go, well, look, that's a task ticked off, and I can just schedule these, and I'm done. That's not going to get you anything, because people will be able to tell that there's no real depth to something like that. So please don't do that. Just use it as an aid to your existing creative ideas and your own personality, rather than a replacement.
So it's interesting because this discussion's come up a few times in this podcast. I spoke to Frank Pendergast, who, he loves AI, and so
Mm.
we were talking about using it, and he's really enthusiastic. But even he says, he copyrights, and he uses it for a lot of stuff as a draft, but then he adds
Hmm.
himself onto it, or his spin onto it. And then I've also
Yeah.
had Sarah Townsend. We talked a lot about, losing that human aspect of it, the stories. If
Mm.
you just ask it to just do 10 blog posts or 10 social posts, because you're in finance, it doesn't have any stories to tell. It hasn't been anywhere, hasn't
Yeah.
done anything, so it loses
Yeah.
these stories. So this is why I like, taking at least some bit of pillar piece of content, like a transcription or a blog post, and saying, well, give it something to work
Hmm.
with, just so that you can, it's got somewhere to start, because otherwise it's not going to sound like you. It's going to be a bit generic, and
Mm.
and then you're going to sound like you were saying earlier in the show, a bit like everyone else on LinkedIn.
Yes, absolutely. And this advice also applies for the comments that you make, because again, you could potentially rig something up so that you've got some tool doing the commenting as you, just to save you the time. But again, I think people will see through that. So don't do anything like that. Make sure it's your own original thoughts. And I don't think by the way, just a little techie tip here. I don't think the bots are yet clever enough to be able to insert their own images or GIFs in comments. And
Mm,
therefore, hopefully, I'm safe in saying that if you see a comment that has got something attached to it, maybe that's the sign of that it is actually definitely a human doing that. I mean, I put my
mm,
personality into my comments by putting my little Bitmojon cartoon into a lot of things. It's just something a little bit fun and memorable. But again, it's probably a sign that, yeah, this thing didn't come from a robot. It came from a real person. So think about that. If you can include some extra media with your comments, that makes them even better. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a humorous thing. It could just be, well, look, I've done some work on this and I found some research, and here's a graph that shows, this massive
mm,
uptick in so and so. Just like it shows again. you really know what you're on about. You're well researched. You're not just pulling things out of thin air. You've got some data to share. So for the analytical audience, that kind of thing really goes down well.
Brilliant. And I must admit, actually, I'd not thought about that before because in a lot of my comments, I will include mine are humorous. I spend hours just finding the right meme or GIF to share in my LinkedIn comments, taking
Hmm.
the time to find something that's really relevant. And I must admit, actually, when I do put an image of some sort, I do get a lot more responses to my
Mm,
comment as well. So that might, that's a really good point as well. Because I think also, you think about that sea of comments, of text-based comments, if one's an
yeah.
image, just visually it stands out a lot more as well.
Yes, that's right. And also, while you're at it, try not to put your links into comments because that's a common mistake that people make. LinkedIn doesn't really think too highly of links in posts or in comments. But if you put a link in your comments, then algorithmically speaking, that comment is less likely to be seen. It'll be sorted down the pile, if you will, versus just something that is text or text plus image. So try to avoid those links because they can be seen as a little bit spammy. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, just try and keep it to text and image if you can.
It's talking about spam because your post was it yesterday or today around you got when someone you looked at someone's profile and then you were
Mm.
added to their email newsletter. That is the one thing I do find. A lot of people think that's what LinkedIn is as well, isn't it? It's
Mm.
a place to just go and cold outreach. I connected
Yeah.
with two people yesterday who I thought might be quite. They'd sent me a connection request. I looked at their profile, thought, oh, they seem quite relevant to me, so I accepted the request. Within
Yeah.
2 hours, I had got two very long sales posts, one each.
Mm.
Nothing about me, weren't even relevant to me at all. They clearly didn't know who I was or what I did. And also, I've had the similar problem with you where I've connected with someone and they've added me them to their email list. My inbox is heavy enough without random people adding me in. It just seemed really so kind of invasive and rude. It's
Yes.
and I think there's these stuff that people they just think it's just a cold lead tool or something, which it absolutely
Yeah.
isn't, is it?
It's saddening because those of us who do the things properly would never
Mm,
dream of doing something like that, and yet we tend to get tarred with the same brush. So, for example, there's a debate going on at the moment about whether it's a good idea to include a message when you invite someone to connect on LinkedIn, and that's limited on free accounts now. So you can only send 5 messages with invitations on a monthly basis, which I think is awfully restrictive. But there we are. That's LinkedIn's business decision. But some people would argue that it's actually not a good idea to put a message at all because it might be seen as being potentially spammy. I would contend that a well personalized and non salesy message, which is what I always aim for, would always beat something that is completely empty. And it's sad if we're in a world where people would rather receive something that's completely empty than something that is actually tailored towards them. Problem is that so many people never take the time to tailor the messages. And they just want to connect with the world so that they can grow their network overnight. And that's just not a good idea. So,
mm,
whichever side of that fence you fall on, I do think it's important that once you make a connection with someone, that you do invest a bit of time in trying to talk to them just like a human being. Don't try and leap straight to sales. The focus of sales sessions that we've done recently in Espresso Plus has been that sales doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes you need to be connected with someone and just be chatting at a quite low level, maybe for months before you stick in their mind long enough that when they need your service, because remember that most people are not in the market for a given service at any given time, but when they are in the market, that they'll go, yeah, that was a nice guy. He's quite helpful. He hasn't tried to shove a load of salesy stuff down my throat. I'm actually going to refer him to someone, or I'm going to hire him
mm.
myself. That's where you want to be, and the DMs is a wonderful way of doing that. So to kind of take things on from what I was saying at the beginning about commenting is a really good way to get started. Staying in touch with people who could be like strategically valuable to you in the DMs over a long period It does require quite a lot of effort, but it's probably the way that all of my business has come about on LinkedIn. So it's a really valuable thing to do, and it's just a case of being human and not being salesy, and looking for opportunities to help the other person first. So, for example, maybe you know someone who would be a perfect fit for someone else, like a business
Mm,
matchmaking kind of thing. And you go, Anna, you don't know Tom, but I think Tom's amazing. I'm going to introduce you. Would you be up for that? Because I think you'd get on really well based on your personalities or what you're interested in. And you become a more valuable node in the network when you do stuff like that.
mm,
Or, Anna, I know you're interested in this topic about digital marketing, and I saw this on a blog and I thought of you. And would you like to read this? It's not mine, but I think you'd like it. It's really good. That again is going to make you think more highly of me. And I haven't done a lot there, but I've just kept you in my
mm,
head and showed you that you matter to me. So the more of that stuff you do on LinkedIn, I think the more you'll just be seen as the hub of the network, the person who's really important, the mover and shaker who's valuable to know. And all of these things are free, right? You don't need to pay
mm.
for LinkedIn Premium or Sales Navigator or Recruiter or any of these paid packages just to, tell better stories and treat people with respect and help them. All of those things are free.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's funny because that's, I mean, that's how, our relationship, isn't it? So, because I was in your free group and then I went into
Yeah.
your paid membership because I found it so valuable. And then
Mm.
last year I had the opportunity to be able to pay you to come to do a session, and it sort of
Yeah.
gradually built up from there. It's funny actually. There's I think I might have I mentioned it on one of my other podcasts as well, because I met a coach at a You Are the Media event, which is another group that me and John are part of, and her name was Abby Lemon, and she is an ADHD coach as well as a coach. And we'd just been chatting in one of the You Are the Media conferences, and I was saying, "Oh, I'm really struggling to focus on projects, this, that, and the other." And she goes, "Oh, have you got ADHD?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know what that is." So we started a chat, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, I've got this sort of checklist." And she sent me this checklist, and I sort of ticked all the boxes of ADHD. And then she sent me this agency for that helps you sign up for access to work. So I also have fibromyalgia as well, and a couple of other bits. And she said, "Oh, you know, these guys are great. I use them, and they can get you help at work. Things like VA to help you organize yourself, or equipment. I've got quite a bit of software through them to help me." And they were brilliant. And I got my access to work, and through it, I got funded for an ADHD coach. So guess who's my ADHD
Nice.
coach now? It's
Fantastic.
it just comes around, doesn't it? And I'm more likely to use people's services that I know through groups, and that I've got to know
Yep.
for a while. Part of your other media, I use Trisha Lewis for unsquashing. There's lots of people I use, and they're kind of like
Yep.
my first port of call, because I've just got to know them. They've sent me, like you said, sent me useful bits over time, and
Mm.
it's just sort of ticked along nicely. And then I'm like, oh, I can use them now, and so I
Mm.
get to pay them some money, which is brilliant. And I feel like it makes it an easier purchase decision as well, because and maybe
Yeah.
an easier relationship, because you know who they are and you know that you're going to get on with them. So Abby, I knew that it was going to be really good, because I knew that I got on with her. And same with you. I know I get on with you, so I knew this was going to be brilliant and it was going to be fun. And also
Mm.
it made me confident that, because I was hiring you for the innovation center, I knew that all of the people attended were going to be happy, and that would be good for my reputation as well. It's that bigger picture, isn't
Yep.
it, that like I said, people are still talking about a year later. And if I'd have chosen someone else that does LinkedIn that I didn't know so well, I wouldn't be as confident that it would go down so well. And in fact, I have had events at the center, and things have not gone well, or they've been a bit disastrous, because of the person maybe been a bit unreliable or not so knowledgeable as they'd made out.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't look great on me then. So it's,
No.
it, I'm less likely now to use people that I don't know, because it can really bite you in the bum.
Absolutely. There you go. It's kind of word of mouth in action as well. You're seeing the evidence over time. I
Mm,
can't think of anyone who has given me like a short term offer as soon as I've met them that I've taken and stayed in touch with. It's anything like that has always been very transactional, and not in terms of relationship building. And I can't even remember
Mm,
who those people are now. It's like they've moved on to the next target, and I wouldn't ever want to be that person. So I don't know if those people probably earn more money than the likes of me do. I don't know, but it doesn't feel like a very wholesome way of operating. So if I don't like that feeling myself, why would I ever want to put that on
mm,
someone else? So I suppose that just to underline the message here is to just always spend the time investing in the relationships, and just keep in mind that it's a long game, and you can have loads of plates spinning for months or maybe even years. But if you keep doing it, then those people will think well of you and refer you and ultimately do business with you. So it's like a long term pipeline
mm.
approach instead of going, I need sales this week. What am I going to do?
Yeah,
If you're in that emergency firefighting mode, this stuff probably isn't going to work for you. Maybe you just go and place some Google ads or something. But LinkedIn is the brilliant place for long-term relationship building because it's such a stable platform. It's been here for more than 20 years. It's backed by Microsoft, who've got pretty much unlimited amounts of money. It's not going anywhere, and it's a great place for meeting really genuine people. I think that there might be a lot of
mm,
time wasters, but there's a lot of lovely people who are just looking to make good relationships and help each other out. So yeah, give it a try if you
yeah.
haven't already.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, it is my main platform. I have a network of people that I just absolutely adore. And it is a really lovely, safe, wonderful space for me that I really enjoy being. And, I would say if you're not enjoying it and you're getting lots of like trolls or horrible people comment, maybe curate your network a little bit because
Mm,
that's what I do. I curate it a little bit, unfollow people. I will, block the occasional racist and just I curate it not heavily, just a little bit, so it's nice and pleasant, and
yeah.
lots of different opinions still. So, have you got any sort of last tips that you think the audience might be good to know before we head off?
Well, I would just re-emphasize how valuable the DMs are, and there are tools
Mm,
in there that really take things to the next level. So I'm a massive fan of sending people voice notes on LinkedIn,
mm,
direct messages, and also even videos where I can give people tips directly. And these are much underused. It's always a rare treat when I receive one from someone else, and very often people say, "Wow, I never knew you could do that. That's really helpful." And I'm going to try that myself. So it's always nice to see people kind of taking on the baton. So yeah, just invest a bit more time in just building those relationships in the DMs, and use things like voice notes and videos to really elevate
mm.
you above your competition.
Even things like gifts. Someone connected with me, and they
Mhm.
didn't send me a sales email. They just said, "Oh, this is me," and something. And he just had this fun gift, and he had a cup of tea, and he was just raising it to the screen. And it was just something that kind of showcased his personality, was a bit fun, and just made it stand out in the DMs as being a bit interesting. So we had a nice long chat
Mm.
after that because I was like, "Oh, this was fun," and he didn't sell me anything. It was lovely. His gift sort of reflected him, and
Nice.
I think it is. We get a bit stuck, don't we, in doing the same thing over and over again, and a bit like you said at the beginning about the track list, that Gus Van Dal was saying about with try and mix things up and make them
Mm.
a bit different because otherwise you do end up doing the same things as everyone else, and it does get boring when you've seen the same thing over and over again. And I love people just trying things and having fun. And this thing is, doesn't have to work first time, does it? You might do things and they completely flop. I mean, you're a big fan of experiments, aren't you, John? just
I
just
am.
keep trying things.
Keep trying things and show that personality. And if you stick at it for long enough, it will work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. John, thank you so much for coming on today. So, if people want to find you, where's best to find you? I think there's not going to be a surprise here.
It's very easy. Just search for Espirian. If you can spell my surname, then you'll find me on my website and on LinkedIn. And I'm more than happy to have a chat there.
Fantastic. I will put the details in the show notes as well. And everyone knows where to find me, Anna Bravington. I'm the only Anna Bravington on LinkedIn. I think you're the only John Espirian.
I
We're
should
nice and
imagine
easy
so.
to find. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're nice and easy to find. So come and search us out if you've got any questions. And thank you again for listening, and see you in the next episode. Bye.